From Marge's twisted punishment of Bart's mistake to Homer's weirdly aggressive homophobia, these are the Simpsons episodes you should never watch. Our first episode is Marge Be Not Proud, featuring a particularly cruel Marge going to extreme measures to punish Bart. Bart's obsession with the video game Bone Storm kicks off with a commercial that makes it look like the coolest thing ever. Of course, Homer and Marge refuse to buy it. It's expensive and way too violent for Marge's liking. Marge tries to soothe Bart's disappointment by tucking him in and singing him a lullaby, which is not at all Bart's thing. He's starting to feel smothered by her overparenting. Anyway, desperate to get that game, Bart tries everything. He hangs out at Milhouse's house to get to play Bone Storm, but Milhouse's mom throws him out. Or should I say, Milhouse gets his mom to throw him out. At the try and save, Bart watches spoiled brat Gavin boss his mom into buying 2 copies of the game. Feeling frustrated and undervalued, Bart ends up shoplifting Bone Storm after being egged on by imaginary video game characters. But his freedom is short-lived. Detective Don Brodka catches him, bans him from the store, and warns him that he's one step away from juvenile hall. He calls Homer and Marge, leaving them a message about his crime. And you just know Marge is not gonna be happy about it. Homer? Indifferent. Bart thinks he's dodged a bullet when he intercepts and hides Brodka's message to his parents. But his luck runs out when Marge announces they're getting their Christmas photo taken. Try and save. Bart tries disguises and protests, but Marge's emotional manipulation kicks in at high gear.
It would mean so much to me if we could have just one nice family photo.
Bart reluctantly goes, only to get caught by Brodka mid-photo shoot. Marge is horrified when Bart confesses to shoplifting and watches the incriminating surveillance tape. She's devastated, not just by Bart's actions, but by the realization that their bond isn't as strong as she believed. And it's from this point on that Marge decides the only way to teach Bart a lesson is to be unthinkably cruel. She punishes Bart by emotionally icing him out. He's excluded from family traditions like decorating the Christmas tree and drinking hot chocolate, and every interaction with Marge feels distant and cold. It's such an unnecessary thing for her to do. She even tells him to make a snowman from dirty snow under the car. Bart spirals, feeling like he's lost her love, and nearly gives up entirely. And to be honest, I blame this entirely on her. It's such an overreaction. In a desperate attempt to win Marge back, Bart buys her a heartfelt Christmas gift, a framed picture of himself with the receipt to prove he paid for it. When Marge finds it, she's overwhelmed with joy, and their bond is restored. Although I still insist he shouldn't have had to do this. As a reward, she gives Bart the game every boy wants, Lee Carvello's putting challenge. Despite the disappointment, Bart smiles, happy to have his mom's love again. As much as I'd love not to play another game of Lee Carvello's putting challenge, we have to move on to an episode that sees Homer attempting to manipulate Bart into being exactly what Homer wants him to be, straight. It's Homer's phobia, so Bart accidentally manages to wreck the dryer and the gas line, leaving the Simpsons with a $900 repair bill and, of course, no money to actually pay it. In a panic to scrape up some cash, Marge tries to sell this authentic Civil War heirloom that she's super proud of, a doll that turns out to be just a cheap old liquor bottle. To be fair, in Springfield, that would be a very valuable antique. The owner of the collectible shop, John, is the super quirky guy who immediately hits it off with the whole family. Well, almost the whole family. At first, Homer is all for John and even suggests inviting him and his wife over. But when Marge mentions that John is quite obviously gay, Homer flips out and starts acting weird. The rest of the family is still all in on their new friend, so they go on this fun Springfield tour with John, leaving Homer to stew in his totally unchecked homophobia. But things get even weirder when Homer notices Bart's, let's say, flamboyant behavior, wearing Hawaiian shirts, dancing in wigs, and eating pink cupcakes. You know, all the totally weird stereotypes that nobody really embraces. Homer becomes convinced Bart might be gay and spirals into full-on overreaction mode. He has to somehow manipulate Bart into liking women.
Don't worry, boy. We're gonna set you straight. By tomorrow morning, you'll be a regular Burt Reynolds.
First, Homer drags Bart to stare at a billboard of women in bikinis, thinking it'll man him up. Well, nice try, but Bart just ends up craving the slim cigarettes from the ad, which makes Homer panic even more. Then Homer takes Bart to a steel mill for a dose of manly energy. But surprise, the entire crew is gay, and during their break, the place transforms into a full-on gay disco. Homer is mortified, but everyone else is fabulous. Out of ideas, Homer listens to Moe's ridiculous advice to toughen Bart up by taking him hunting. With Moe and Barney tagging along, they can't find any deer, so Homer decides they'll shoot reindeer at Santa's village instead. Genius plan, right? Nope, the reindeer fights back and things get chaotic fast. Everyone's genuinely terrified and the whole macho act crumbles. Turns out these manly men are just big babies. Luckily, John swoops in wielding a Japanese robot Santa Claus, of all things, to scare off the reindeer and save the day. Homer finally realizing he's been a jerk, thanks John and awkwardly accepts him for who he is. On the ride home, Homer tells Bart he'll love him no matter what, but Bart's totally confused, until Lisa points out that Homer thinks Bart's gay. And the episode wraps with a dedication to America's steelworkers. Keep reaching for that rainbow, boys. The episode has a pretty happy ending, with Homer promising he'll always love Bart no matter what. But this next episode reveals that Homer will also always exploit Bart no matter what, and then vow to do it again. It's Barting over. The episode starts when Bart stumbles on some old VHS tapes during spring cleaning. He and Lisa find one labeled Bart's Sad, but it turns out to be an old baby mouthwash commercial starring Bart as baby stink breath. Bart has no memory of filming it and is humiliated when he sees himself acting foolish on screen. Lisa and Maggie laugh their heads off, but Bart's mortified. He is starting to realize that his parents have possibly taken advantage of him for profit and never even told him. When Bart confronts Marge and Homer, they're kinda weird about the whole thing. Homer tries brushing it off, but Marge accidentally spills that Bart made a lot of money from the commercials. That sets Bart off. Where's all his money? I mean, he was the one doing all the work, so surely he's entitled to something from it. While Homer admits he spent it all to buy back embarrassing photos of himself dangling Bart over a hotel balcony. Let's not have any questions about that. I don't think we have the time in this video. Bart's furious, and things get even worse when Homer talks about treating Bart however he wants until he's 18. Okay, that's crossing several dozen lines there. Determined to take action, Bart hires a lawyer and sues Homer for emancipation. And throughout the whole thing, tension at home explodes. Marge tries to smooth things over, but Bart makes it clear he's only targeting Homer. In court, Bart lays out his case with over-the-top dramatics, including a doll and efforts to incite Homer's typical rage. Judge Homer agrees Bart deserves to move out, and Homer's forced to pay half his salary to Bart until the money's repaid. Naturally, Homer's tantrum lands him in contempt of court. Bart moves into his own loft, bids emotional goodbyes to everyone except Homer, and starts living it up. His neighbors include Tony Hawk, who takes him under his wing, and even Blink-182 joins the party. Yeah, let's not question why these Hollywood celebrities are so willing to party with a 10-year-old boy living alone. That's a tale for another day. Meanwhile, Homer spirals playing baseball with a Bart dummy and lamenting his mistakes. Marge finally convinces him to apologize. When Homer tries to win Bart over at Tony Hawk's skate event, it backfires spectacularly because, duh. Only after some skater lingo wisdom does Homer realize his mistakes. He promises to do better, and Bart agrees to reconcile. Homer eventually stars in a cringe-worthy impotence commercial to repay Bart, believing that nobody will ever remember it. Decades later, his gravestone immortalizes his embarrassing ad. Well, who could have possibly seen that one coming? So in Homer's eyes, it's totally fine for a parent to exploit their child for profit. But our next episode, Mother Simpson, has him on the receiving end of his mom's lifelong lie that she claimed to be dead and avoided him her entire life. The episode starts with Mr. Burns forcing his employees to clean up a highway on a Saturday like the cruel old man he is, but Homer fakes his own death by tossing a dummy of himself off of a cliff so he can ditch work and spend the day with his family. Anyway, the plan backfires when the whole town thinks he's actually dead. Marge gets bombarded with condolences, including a tombstone from Patty and Selma that they've apparently been saving since her wedding. They're thrilled, but Marge? Not so much. When the power gets cut off because everything's in Homer's name, Marge finally snaps and makes him fix this mess. At City Hall, while clearing up the "I'm not dead" confusion, Homer stumbles across a record that his mom, Mona, is supposedly still alive. He goes to her supposed grave and, surprise, it's Walt Whitman's grave. Yeah, she lied to him. That's painful. Just as Homer's losing it, Mona shows up. At first, she doesn't believe it's him, but after he proves it, they have this emotional reunion after 27 years. Turns out, she's been alive this whole time and made him think she was dead. Mona comes home to meet the family, and everyone's reactions are priceless. Marge is stunned to have a mother-in-law. Bart's all about catching up on missed Christmas presents, and Lisa immediately bonds with Mona over their shared love of activism. But things get shady when a police car drives by. and Mona freaks out. Something is up with her. Lisa and Bart dig into her past. Well, Bart raids her purse, but same thing, and the family confronts her. She finally comes clean. Back in the 60s, she became a hippie and joined a protest group. They destroyed one of Mr. Burns' germ labs, which cured Clancy Wiggum's asthma, but put Mona on the run after Burns identified her. Now he's out for vengeance. Homer finally understands why she left, but feels hurt she didn't reach out at any point. Mona insists she tried, so they head to the post office to recover her old letters, where of course Burns spots her and calls the FBI. Wiggum, grateful for his asthma cure, helps Mona escape, but it's no good. In the end, she has to go back into hiding. The episode ends with Homer waving at her van as it drives away, and later he's sitting on his car, staring at the stars, missing her all over again. It's actually an extremely heartbreaking way to end. Seems like cruel emotional manipulation is a natural Simpson trait, one that even Lisa isn't exempt from. In Lisa's rival, Lisa earns her Simpson name by unfairly orchestrating the downfall of a potential rival. Okay, so Lisa is living her best life as the smartest kid in class until Allison Taylor shows up, basically a younger, smarter version of herself. And get this, Allison skipped a grade, which means she's even more of a prodigy than Lisa. Well, Lisa doesn't like that. Lisa tries to be friendly at first, but the jealousy starts eating her alive, especially as Allison keeps excelling at everything. Then comes the Diorama-rama, Springfield Elementary's annual competition where students build these elaborate dioramas. Allison's already made hers, this amazing setup based on the Telltale Heart. Lisa scrambles to keep up and creates a diorama of Oliver Twist with fake snow and a fan for drama. But of course, the whole thing falls apart thanks to her snowstorm idea. At this point, Lisa's convinced she'll lose, but her insecurities hit a breaking point. So her Simpsonness starts coming to the surface when Bart offers to help Lisa sabotage Allison. On the day of the contest, Bart swaps Allison's diorama with a box containing an actual cow heart. When Principal Skinner sees it, he's horrified and humiliates Allison in front of everyone, even saying it was a mistake to let her skip her grade. Allison is crushed, and while everyone laughs at her expense, Lisa starts to feel the guilt creeping in. She did this. She destroyed Allison's chances. She literally starts hearing a heartbeat, like Allison's diorama coming to life, and her conscience wins out. Lisa interrupts the contest, brings out Allison's real diorama, and confesses everything. Neither of them ends up winning because Ralph Wiggum, of all people, beats them with a box of Star Wars action figures still in their original packaging. Skinner loves it for the nostalgia and nothing more. In the end, Lisa and Allison realize the rivalry wasn't worth it, make up, and become friends. They even invite Ralph to hang out with them after he wrecks his prize. Lisa is supposed to be the smart one in the family, but Bart has always had a reputation as the bad one of the family. Case in point, No Good Reed goes unpunished, an episode where he truly masters the art of war. When the episode starts, Springfield is hooked on an itchy and scratchy show marathon, but Marge has had enough. Too many screens, too much family time, or not enough actually. She forces the family to unplug for the day, much to everyone's annoyance. After a series of failed outings, they end up at an old-timey bookstore. Bart stumbles across tickets for a Tunnelcraft gaming convention and begs Homer to let him buy them, but Homer says no. Well, that's just not good enough for Bart. Bart decides to buy The Art of War to learn how to manipulate Homer into giving him what he wants, which, to be fair to him, is actually not a terrible idea. Bart starts small, testing the book's advice on Nelson at school by distracting him to avoid getting beat up, and it actually works. Feeling confident, he levels up his scheme by enlisting Homer's friends, bribing them to help mess with Homer's head. Bart goes all out, planting gongs, banners, and other weird distractions that make Homer increasingly paranoid. He's basically brainwashing his father into an eternal state of terror. The final straw, Homer falls for a trap involving milk balls and ends up almost drowning in mud. Defeated, Homer agrees to take Bart and Milhouse to the Tunnelcraft convention. At the convention, things escalate. Homer learns from Milhouse that Bart has been using the Art of War against him, and Homer, of course, is furious about the whole thing. Well, furious and inspired. Homer decides to flip the script back on him. He reads the book, yeah really, and decides to fight back by acting like Ned Flanders, fake mustache and all, which is an extreme approach, but it seems to work. Homer's over-the-top Ned routine drives Bart nuts, and things hit their peak when Homer drags Bart and the real Ned to a silent movie. Bart finally snaps, begging Homer to go back to normal. Homer agrees on one condition.
Give me your Halloween candy.
But it's Marge.
and settling in to watch another silent movie with Ned, which feels really out of character for Homer, but to be fair, this episode is pretty bad, so I guess we have to expect that. Alright, so I think this episode clearly shows that Bart is a problem child, which makes him perfectly qualified for the role of a lifetime, Burns' adoptive son, and Burns' heir. Burns decides to adopt Bart, and he will stop at nothing to keep him. This episode kicks off with Mr. Burns having a near-death experience, by which I mean he almost drowns under the weight of a sponge in his bathtub. Freaked out about his lack of an heir, he announces a competition for local kids to become his protege, because obviously at his age, doing it naturally is very much unlikely. Bart auditions, but Burns rejects him in style. A machine literally boots him out the door. Bart, of course, doesn't take that lying down and unleashes his inner delinquent, smashing windows, wrecking statues, and flooding Burns' car. Now, for everybody else, that would be a heck of a lawsuit, but instead of getting mad, Burns is impressed. Hard to argue with that assessment. Bart is basically the devil. Marge is wary, but Homer is all for it. Money's money after all. Bart's not sold at first. Burns' attempts to bond with him are weird. One bonding session involves tying Bart to a chair with a gag. Accidentally, but still, that's a big ol' red flag. Eventually though, Bart warms up to the perks of living with Burns. He gets whatever he wants, whenever he demands it. When he goes back to his family, their normal life just doesn't compare. Annoyed at not being treated like royalty, Bart runs right back to Burns. The Simpsons try everything to get Bart back, from hiring Lionel Hutz, who is completely useless as usual, to an unhinged deprogrammer who grabs the wrong person. Meanwhile, Burns keeps Bart close by playing on his insecurities, showing him a fake video of actors pretending to be his real family, bad-mouthing him. Feeling unwanted, Bart fully commits to being Burns' heir. This is the life he wants. But the honeymoon phase doesn't last. Burns drags Bart to the nuclear plant, where they gleefully fire employees via a trapdoor. But everything changes when Burns orders Bart to fire Homer, hoping to sever Bart's family ties for good. That's where Bart draws the line. He cannot punish his family like that. Instead of firing his dad, Bart fires Burns. Burns plummets through the trapdoor, with a loyal Smithers jumping in after him. With his Burns chapter closed, Bart returns to The Simpsons. Marge emphasizes how much the family missed him, and they share a sweet reunion. Until Homer introduces Bart's new brother, the still brainwashed Mole Man. Bart is a natural troublemaker, that much we always knew. Turns out he got it from his dad. In The Way We Was, we get a glimpse at younger Homer doing whatever he had to do to land Marge. The episode starts with the TV breaking down, so Marge decides to tell the kids how she and Homer first met. You know, just in case they weren't bored enough, cue the flashback to 1974. Where we find a young Marge, a responsible student with a feminist streak, and Homer who's, well, Homer. He doesn't change. They meet in detention after Marge gets punished for burning a bra at a feminist rally, while Homer and Barney are there for smoking in the boys' room. The second Homer sees Marge, he's hooked. But getting her attention isn't so easy. He has to actually try, which doesn't come easy for him. Homer's first move, joining the debate team to be near her, even though he's wildly out of his league. Unfortunately for him, Marge is way more interested in Artie Ziff, the slick-talking, know-it-all debate star. Desperate, Homer pretends he's struggling with French and convinces Marge to tutor him, which is just such an unnecessary lie. But then, he is a young guy, so let's just give him some credit here. When he finally works up the courage to ask her to prom, she says yes. But then she finds out about his fake French scheme, slaps him, and storms off. Still, Homer's convinced he and Marge are meant to be, so he shows up at her house on prom night to take her out. The plan falls apart when Artie arrives instead, and Homer realizes she's already chosen him. Despite this, Homer goes to the prom solo because he sunk too much money into it. Tux, limo, dinner, you name it. He got a little ahead of himself. The night's a total disaster. He watches Marge and Artie get crowned prom queen and king, then cries in the hallway while the love of his life dances with someone else. When Marge finds him, Homer lays his heart bare, telling her he just knows they're supposed to be together. Marge feels bad for him, but she's not buying it and leaves with Artie. She won't allow herself to be guilted into choosing someone who would just lie to her again. But then Artie blows it. He tries to force himself on Marge, and she's so disgusted she just ditches him. On the drive home, she realizes she's made a mistake. She finds Homer walking home alone, his limo time expired, and picks him up. In the sweetest moment, she tells him she should have gone to prom with him. Even though, let's be real, she didn't really have any reason to do so. Homer's over the moon. Back in the present, Homer's still clinging to Marge, and while Lisa finds the story heartwarming, Bart's all gross. All they want is to get back to watching TV, which is good news because in Homer vs. Lisa and the 8th Commandment, Homer steals cable, until Lisa decides to guilt him into abandoning it. The episode opens with Homer dreaming he's some ancient thief who gets busted when Moses delivers the 10 Commandments. When he wakes up, he's in modern Springfield, back to being, well, Homer, which means he doesn't have to obey any kind of commandment, of course. Fortunate, as he's about to get a chance to get free cable. Even though Ned Flanders turns it down because it's stealing, Homer jumps on the offer and soon has the whole family watching a ridiculous number of channels. Everyone seems thrilled, except Lisa, who's clearly bothered by the whole thing, and no amount of TV will change that. Lisa's Sunday school lesson about hell doesn't help. She's convinced that breaking the 10 Commandments, especially thou shalt not steal, means eternal damnation, and now she's worried about Homer's soul. She even starts seeing their house melting into a fiery pit, complete with a devil lounging on their couch. Homer, of course, brushes it off, while Lisa becomes a one-girl crusade against all kinds of stealing, even calling out Marge for tasting grapes at the grocery store. Okay, I'm kinda with her on that one. Poor Lisa goes to Reverend Lovejoy for guidance, but his advice set a good example, so she decides not to watch anything on the illegal cable, hoping her silent protest will get through to her dad. It's like she's never met Homer before, but does it work? I think you already know the answer. Obviously, Homer's too busy planning a party to watch a big pay-per-view boxing match. He invites the whole gang. Moe, Barney, Apu, even Mr. Burns shows up to see it without paying. And for his part, Bart tries to turn the cable into a money-making scheme, charging kids 50 cents to watch adult programming. But Homer shuts that down quick. Killjoy could have made like $5 there. Still, Lisa's protest starts to get to Homer. She's guilted him and made him feel ashamed, although her visible disappointment and refusal to join in the fun weigh on him more than any actual guilt about stealing. Finally, during the big fight, Homer gives in, not because he thinks stealing is wrong, but because Lisa's disapproval is unbearable. He finally realizes that his daughter is more important than any TV event. He skips the match and awkwardly cuts the cable himself. Of course, this is Homer, so in the process, he accidentally knocks out power for all of Springfield before finally managing to sever the right wire. The point is that Homer got there in the end, proving manipulation works, which is why his first act on a computer is to basically destroy the reputations of everybody else in town. This is the computer war Menace Shoes. So Homer somehow ends up being the only person to show up for work at the power plant because apparently everyone else got an email saying the plant was closed for fumigation. Well, Homer only didn't get the memo because he doesn't even own a computer. Feeling left out and annoyed that he actually missed a legitimate day off, he decides it's time to join the digital age. The Simpsons are getting a computer. Naturally, he heads to a store and falls for a salesman pitch, blowing his money on the priciest computer they have. Yeah, welcome to my world, buddy. When the computer doesn't assassinate Ned Flanders, Homer's first test, naturally, he almost throws it away, but Lisa steps in to teach him how to actually use it, without trying to murder anyone. Once Homer is semi-literate with technology, he creates a website. It's not great. Actually, it's a chaotic mix of spam and stolen memes like a dancing Jesus, which Lisa immediately calls out as copyright infringement. You know, on Jesus' trademark and rights, nobody steals his dances and gets away with it. Lisa suggests that Homer should create something useful for society, and Homer agrees. It's time to start talking smack about everybody. Inspired by some gossip Bart spills about Mayor Quimby misusing pothole repair funds, Homer reinvents himself as Mr. X, an anonymous whistleblower exposing Springfield's scandals online, even if they're not true. When he exposes Quimby's intern swimming pool scam, the town is thrilled and Mr. X is hailed as a hero. But Homer can't stay anonymous for long. When the townspeople try to reward Mr. X with a donation to charity, Homer blows his cover because, well, he's not about to let that money go to someone else. He earned that money by spreading lies. He even ends up winning a Pulitzer Prize. Unfortunately, the fame dries up his real leads, so Homer starts making up wild conspiracy theories. One story claims flu shots are part of a mind control plot, and shocker, it turns out to be actually true. Before he knows it, Homer's been kidnapped at a fake Quickie Mart and taken to a mysterious island full of people who've uncovered government secrets. Anyway, Homer eventually escapes the island on a janky boat, pops a giant escape orb, and makes it home just in time to defeat a German-accented clone. But the whole family gets drugged by a fake Santa's little helper and sent right back to the island. Yeah, it's really something. Homer tries to blow the whistle online, but the secret organization crashes his site.